Hey guys, it's Tori, and today I am starting my vlog for my first reads of 2023. I'm so excited. If you are new to my channel, you may not have been around for the tournament I did this past month to decide what my first reads of 4 different groupings of books that I read will be the first ones that I read in this year. So I'll be able to explain that a little bit better as we get into the actual books, but it's actually the 3rd of January and I have started already. I just had not created time to do this, mostly because I have been very inspired to write the past couple of days. So we'll get into that in a minute. I would have just cut that out, but I definitely just paused for a little bit to realize that it's actually the 5th. It's not the 3rd. I was confused for a moment because I felt like it had definitely been more than 2 days that I had been writing this month. So anyway, 5th. It's the 5th. But let's start with the books first, and then I'll kind of get into some other stuff going on. So I have started both Crime and Punishment by Fyodor Dostoevsky, which was the winner of my classics part of the tournament. And then I have also started The Last Kingdom by Bernard Cornwell, which won the historical fiction part of the tournament. I am only about 36 pages into The Last Kingdom, so I'm not very far. I'm hoping to get a little bit more read today. However, I am in the middle of editing a very long vlog that will be going up tomorrow, so not totally sure how it's going to go, but I am already getting into this. I have read Bernard Cornwell before, just one other book by him if I can remember correctly, and unfortunately I don't really like his writing style. It takes me a little bit to get used to it because it's very choppy. It sounds so staccato in my head, and it's just, I don't like it. I feel like he does it on purpose, but I just don't like it. But it's also not a writing style that I can't get used to, so I am getting used to it. I'm getting invested enough. We've just gotten to the night after the battle where Uhtred is taken by the Danes, which, if you don't know what The Last Kingdom is about, this is the first in a series by Bernard Cornwell set during the reign of King Alfred the Great. And we follow a fictionalized character named Uhtred, who is meant to be, I think, a great lord or even king of part of Britain. But when he's very young, his father and many men in his kingdom or nation or land end up being killed by Vikings, and one of the Vikings ends up taking a liking to Uhtred and takes him in. And so I'm at the point where it's the night after the battle and Uhtred's been taken in and he's just having some conversations with people. Furthermore, in this series, he does end up meeting Alfred the Great, and I think they have some sort of comradeship that develops. I am not 100% certain, which I don't want to be. I want to discover as I read along, obviously. I did actually watch the first 2 episodes of this show because my dad watched it, but I wasn't really in a position to want to. Plus, I kind of had wanted to start reading the series before I watched it, so I didn't end up continuing. So maybe once I finish reading at least this first book, I can jump back into that television series on Netflix, and I may just watch up to where this book ends and then go into the second one and do the same thing. We'll see how it goes, but I am liking this, started it, and we'll see how the rest of it goes for me. In Crime and Punishment, I am not very far either. I'm only about 54 pages into that, but that's okay because, as you can see, I purposely have broken it up to read throughout the month. I have not done my reading for today, so by the end of today I should be on page 74. But I am really liking this as well. I think the main character is very interesting. He's very erratic, and it's odd to be in his head a little bit. This book follows a man named, it's a Russian name, I can never remember. His name's Raskolnikov, probably didn't say that correctly, but anyway, this man who we learn right from the beginning that he wants to do something to this old woman, and it becomes clear and clear that he wants to murder her, and then we start to learn why. And if I remember correctly from what other people have said, the murder itself actually happens earlier on than you would think. And then the rest of the book is following that punishment for the crime that he committed, both, I'm sure, within society in some ways, but also within himself and morally and stuff. So anyway, it's really interesting so far. I will say one qualm I have with Russian literature, at least classic Russian literature. I have not read anything written by a Russian author in more recent times, but I find that they just wax very philosophical in a way that is just not always the most interesting to me. They get so long-winded with their characters, of their characters just having these existential crises all the time and just thinking so deeply about all these things that I'm like, who thinks that way? Nobody does. And so I don't mind some philosophy in books, but I prefer it to be more intertwined with the story. I don't really like it when it's like, stop everything that's happening and let's have a soliloquy by the character as if this is an old play. So there has been some of that, which I don't love, but I will say I am more engaged in this already than I have been with either War and Peace or Anna Karenina. So I would say Dostoevsky, as of right now, might beat Tolstoy in my eyes. Not that I disliked War and Peace or Anna Karenina, but they just, neither of them gripped me all that much. So anyway, yes, I'm working on that. It's going well. Once I finish The Last Kingdom, I'll probably go for Piranesi, and then I'll probably end the month with Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb, just to break up some of the more medieval battle-y type stories between Last Kingdom and Assassin's Apprentice. And then, like I said, I'm reading Crime and Punishment throughout the month. Some other things going on. I am also currently reading La Morte d'Arthur by Sir Thomas Malory, which if you watched my TBR for this month, you'll know that I planned to just read 10 pages a day of this until I finish it. So it will probably not be until March or April that I actually will finish it because it is very long. But I have gotten about 40 pages in. Yeah. That would make sense because it's the 5th. And I'm not reading on Sundays. So yeah, that would make sense. Anyway, yes, I am 40 pages in. I'm also taking notes on Post-its of just like names and things and little plot points that I want to remember, because one of my goals for 2023 that did not have to do with this channel really or with reading was to get started on writing my book, which is going to be, well, I have 2 books that I'm going to be writing, one nonfiction, one fiction, and the fiction is a King Arthur retelling. I know I'm basic, but I want to write it. And like I said earlier in this video, I have just been so driven. Like, I have been thinking about this story for years now, and I still have a lot of things to work out. Like, I know that there's going to hit a point where I will have to do a little bit more brainstorming, but at least for this first little bit, like, I am just flying through the story. Like, I have thought about this so much that my brain and my hands just know what to do, and it's been so much fun. Unfortunately, I don't think I'll be able to write today because I am editing that vlog and it is like an hour of footage. So yeah, it's gonna take me a while, and then I need to read my portion of Crime and Punishment, although I may not and just read it Sunday, just because I do need to do this vlog and I kind of wanted to read The Last Kingdom. So anyway, we'll see how tonight goes. Other things happening, I am going to have a wonderful evening with my friend Karyana, who we have not exchanged Christmas presents with. I have not exchanged Christmas presents with yet. I don't usually talk about personal life things quite as much on this channel, so you may not have remembered me mentioning Karyana, but she is the friend that you may have remembered in my 2023 goals. I mentioned doing a podcast with a friend of mine. She is the friend that I would love to do the podcast with. But anyway, tomorrow night I will be having a movie night with her. We're gonna get pizza. We're going to exchange Christmas gifts finally. And I think there's several things we could watch, but it's possible we'll be able to watch To Walk Invisible about the Bronte sisters, which is a movie / miniseries thing that I absolutely love. So, and she hasn't seen it, so we might do that. So I may or may not get some B-roll footage from that. Oh, I guess I also have mentioned Karyana because she's the one who goes to Shakespeare Festival with me every year for the past couple years, and I've done vlogs on those. So anyway, all that to say, I'm excited for tomorrow night. Reading's going well, writing's going well, and yeah, it's just been good. I've been feeling really good. So I'm going to end this clip here because it's already dummy long, and I will see you in my next clip. First of all, pardon any scratchiness in my voice. I just ate some cheese and I've been talking all day at work. So anyway, I also know that the lighting in here is not all that great, but I wanted a different background for y'all, so here we are. Plus this chair is just really comfortable. So anyway, I got on here to talk about books. It is, I believe, the 12th of January. I didn't check before this, but it's definitely either the 12th or the 13th. It is the second Thursday in January, and I haven't finished either of these two. I have finished one book though. I finished the audiobook of Death by Shakespeare by Kathryn Harkup, maybe? This was a nonfiction just basically discussing different ways Shakespearean characters die and the medical background behind it. So she discusses a bunch of information around that, from what happens to the body during each of these different scenarios, as well as what they knew back in those times about certain poisons and diseases and stuff, and then what we know nowadays about it. And so it's really interesting. Definitely if you're not into medical stuff, I would not suggest it. I really enjoyed it, and the audiobook was great. I think I gave it 4 stars on Goodreads and then 4.25 on Storygraph. I felt like it was just above 4 stars, but not close to a 5 stars necessarily, but it was really good, really interesting, like I said. So yes, technically my first read of the year was not any of the books on from my tournament, but to be fair, I started that in December and just didn't end up finishing it then, so I just happened to finish it in January instead. So anyway, back to the tournament results and what I've been reading from that. So first of all, starting with Crime and Punishment by Fyodor Dostoevsky. I am almost halfway through it. I know it doesn't look like it, but most of this back portion, because it's a Norton Critical Edition, it has a whole bunch of notes. So all of this is just like notes and essays and stuff. So it really ends there. So you can see I'm close-ish to the midway point. I've been reading about 18 pages a day, and I'm really liking it. I knew a lot of people had really loved this and raved about it, so I had strong expectations going in. But originally I wasn't really sure how I would feel because I don't really like the main character, but I also don't think you're supposed to. I can't remember what his full name is, but I'll just say Rodya, as that's his nickname. I really find him interesting. I feel like we're introduced to him at a point in his life where he really is losing his mind. It seems like a lot of things have gone wrong for him, and he's become obsessed with some inappropriate ideas, immoral ideas, and he knows they're immoral and it stresses him out, and then he acts on those ideas and he tortures himself over his actions. But you get the feeling from what other people have said to him and also said about him that he used to be much more level-headed, but throughout this he is very all over the place and it's hard to keep track of where his head's at, where his emotions are at. He's constantly flipping back and forth between being content and being hysterical, and it's just hard to understand who he is as a person, really, because he has become consumed with this act that he's committed, which I'm sure is part of the point of the book, is that he's lost himself in this immoral act and he can't stop thinking about it. And yet, like I said, you get the feeling that before this book starts, he was a much more level-headed person, and there's kind of hints that maybe he had a woman he loved who ended up passing away, and so that kind of kick-started a lot of his misfortune. I don't know that for sure. It hasn't outright said that, but it just, you kind of get the feeling based on hints that have been given. We just recently met his mom and sister, who I find very fascinating, especially, yeah, his sister in particular I found very fascinating. I'm excited to see how her plot line and her character continues to develop, because I feel like she is a great foil right now for her brother. She is much more level-headed. Already you can tell that she's very level-headed, she's very present with what's going on, she's very caring about other people and doesn't feel bad about being caring about other people. And she also, you know, has these negative emotions, but she's able to rein them in and control them. She's willing to sacrifice herself as opposed to sacrificing other people for the greater good or even just personal good for her family. She is very giving and intelligent, and I'm excited, like I said, to continue with her character and see how she continues to be characterized. And yeah, it's really good. It's a very psychological book, so I think if that's not really your style, if you want more plot, I don't think this is the right book for you. There is quite a bit of plot, I will say, especially for a classic. I feel like there's a lot happening consistently, but there are also pages and pages of us hearing Rodya's thoughts and feelings and just his swings back and forth psychologically, and a lot of the events spur on more changes within that. So there is, I mean, just by nature though of the story itself, like there's just tension throughout. So maybe, like, I would say this is a really good place to start with classics, especially if you're a more plot-driven reader, because even though there's still a lot of psychological study in it, it's not necessarily as pacey as maybe a book like this would be nowadays. It is still pretty pacey and easy to read. So basically I just turned right around with my opinion on that, because I started saying this by saying if you're a plot-driven reader you might still not like this, which is still true. I mean, not every book's going to be for everyone, but I actually think if you're more of a plot-driven reader and you haven't read many classics, or if you haven't really liked some of the classics you've read because you felt like they were too slow, try this out. Like I said, it is still slower than maybe a book like this would be nowadays, but it is much more pacey than a lot of other classics that I've read. So anyway, this is going great. The other book I'm obviously working on besides Le Morte d'Arthur, which I'm not going to talk about here because I don't really have many thoughts. Maybe I'll briefly mention it at the end, but I am filming a specific vlog for that, so I don't want to share too much anyway on this vlog. But I'm also working on The Last Kingdom by Bernard Cornwell. I am 100 pages in, so not very far, but I do want to finish this by the end of this week if I can, in the next few days, which now that I'm more into the story and the writing style, I think I'll be able to start speeding up my reading speed, and I'm going to have a lot more time this weekend than I have in the past little while to do it. So anyway, hopefully I will be able to succeed and finish this weekend so I can move on to Piranesi. Thoughts on this? I am enjoying it. I have to say I am not the biggest fan of Bernard Cornwell's writing style. I just feel like it's very choppy. I am now more accustomed to it, acclimated to it, I guess is maybe a better word for it, but I've gotten used to it as I've continued reading. But there are just certain sentences and things that I'm like, ugh, I just don't, it kind of grates on my brain the way he writes. So I will say, even though Bernard Cornwell, I've only read one other book by him. I think it was, I'm pretty sure only one other book, and it was Agincourt, which I did really like. I keep mushing my words together, but and that too, the writing style really grated on my brain. So that is a downside in my mind to Bernard Cornwell, is his writing style. But he is really great at bringing these medieval worlds to life, and I really appreciate that, these historical worlds to life. As of right now, thinking about continuing on with this series, if I'd want to or not, I think I would want to, but I think I might end up doing it on audiobook because I don't think I necessarily want to own all of these. That could totally change. I still have a couple hundred pages left to read, obviously. So I may end up changing my mind and be like, no, I want to get this whole series. I want to read all the way through it. But I think it's a case where I do want to read through it all as of right now. But I think I'd want to audiobook it so I can just listen through them and not have them taking up space on my shelves. I could go to the library, I know, but when I physically read, I feel like I need to read what I own because I have so many books that I own that I have not read yet. Plus, I just think that this could be really fun to listen to on audiobook, just the story itself. So anyway, yes, this is going well, enjoying it. Would it be considered a new favorite? As of right now, I don't think so, but not necessarily because it's not a great book. I just think that my tastes maybe aren't in line with having this be a favorite. They're in line with having this be enjoyable to me, but a favorite, probably not. But like I said, I have like a couple hundred pages still to read, more than a couple hundred pages. I guess just barely over a couple hundred. Anyway, I have some more pages to read, a good amount, so things could totally change and I'll let you know if they do. But that is the end of this clip. I probably won't update you again until I finish The Last Kingdom, and then I will be starting Piranesi next once I do finish that. Hey guys, so I have a very brief update. It is Saturday after I last spoke with you, the 3rd? No, it's the 14th. It is 4:30 in the afternoon, and I have finished The Last Kingdom by Bernard Cornwell, and I ended up giving it 4.5 stars on Storygraph, 4 stars on Goodreads. I actually ended up liking it more than I did in my last clip. I just felt like by the end of this book, I had slowly been drawn in to loving Uhtred as a character, and I definitely have liked him the whole time. but I feel like by the end of this, I ended up really being more attached to him and to the story than I thought I was. I also think there's just a part of me that is engaged enough with it and just that I just want to find out more about Alfred's story because I really don't know all that much about him. So part of me is drawn into this just for the interest of learning more about this time period, about these events in history. I did get a slightly misty-eyed at a couple of portions in the second half of this book between Ragnar and things that go on with him, and then even the end with Ubba. If you've read it, I felt very surprisingly emotional at that little part towards the end and how Uhtred treats him towards the end. I'm trying to be as vague as possible for those who haven't read this and want to. Not a 5 stars, obviously, but it did engage me. I think this is the kind of series that will just be very entertaining for me and enjoyable in that way. And sometimes you just need that. Like, it's not a book I think that would ever be my personal favorite. And the reason it's not 5 stars is partially, as mentioned in the last clip, the writing style. I think he has moments where his writing's good, where he has a sentence or two or a paragraph that is beautifully written. And then he goes back into this very choppy writing style that I just don't love all that much. Again, I got used to it, but there were a few times where I did notice it, and yeah, it just bothers me. The other thing is just as a personal preference, I'm not big into the battle scenes, and a huge amount of this book is focused on the battle scenes, and that's just not really my cup of tea while reading. So unfortunately there was a large chunk of this book that I was a little more, I don't want to say bored with because it's a battle, but kind of. Like, I was like, okay, let's get back into the characters and their psychology and stuff and their relationships, because that's what I like to read about. So between those things, I couldn't give it quite 5 stars or even 4.75 stars. It just wasn't that high for me, but it was very enjoyable. I understand why a lot of people love it, and I know I said that I wanted to listen to the audiobooks of the rest of this series, and I still might, but I did listen to a sample of the audiobook for the second one just out of curiosity, and I don't know how much I like the narrator, so I may actually end up just purchasing the rest of the series used as I go along, but continuing with the series probably won't happen for a little bit because of other plans I have. But there you go, that is my first historical fiction of the year based on the tournament results, and I would say it was a success overall. So now I'm going to move into Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. This one's shorter than The Last Kingdom, which is nice, less pages, and I think the font, the amount of words per page is a little bit more. So I think I'm going to get through this a little bit faster than The Last Kingdom, although who really knows. But my goal is to try to finish it by the end of next week at the latest, so that I can get into Assassin's Apprentice and have time to finish that by the end of the month. So yeah, that's where I'm at. Crime and Punishment still going well. I don't have necessarily very many new thoughts to share because I did just give an update, 1 or 2 days ago. So that's where this clip is going to end. And then I will update you probably when I either have just thoughts on Piranesi or maybe when I just finish it, depending on how fast I get through it. I have completed Piranesi by Susanna Clarke, and wow, what to say about this book? I really liked it. I was really confused for a lot of the book, but I read most of it in one sitting because I had broken up the first maybe like 100 pages. Actually, it was probably more like 70 pages, and I was reading it over a couple days with what time I was able to find to read it. And every time I was just like, man, I just want to be able to sit and just read this all the way through so I just know what's happening. I just need to know. And so finally today I had the day off work, so I decided to do that. It is a 5-star read, absolutely adored it, and I think it's going to live rent-free in my head for a very long time. Like many other people, I don't know how to describe this book beyond Piranesi is a being, a person who is living in this very strange world that's basically like a giant house with a lot of rooms, and he's exploring it and learning things about things along the way, and I think that's the best way to describe it without giving any spoilers away. It's a trippy book, it's crazy. In fact, the other night I went to a performance of my sister's. They were doing a dance performance of Frozen, so kind of like a ballet but not necessarily just ballet, but she played Olaf. It was great, it was wonderful. wonderful, but that was besides the point. I did go to both of her shows. She did one Tuesday night and one Wednesday. Tuesday was when she played Olaf. The second night, they had a second cast that was performing. But the second night, it was just me and my mom, and we sat next to this woman who asked me if I was reading this, noticed I was reading this, and told me it's really trippy, but it's really good. So by that point, I already knew it was very trippy. But it was kind of fun to have that little interaction, and she was very right. It just got more and more trippy the further I got, but it all came together in the end very nicely, and I love Piranesi as a character. I find him very fascinating, and it was fun to be in his head. I found the world he's in to be very enchanting, and this book is very hard to classify as far as genre. I definitely would agree it's in the fantasy realm because a lot of it has fantastical elements, but I also feel like there's kind of a thriller aspect to it. It also has a lot of literary aspects to it, psychological aspects to it, as well as some philosophical ideas that are not largely discussed but are implied, which I thought was beautifully done. Anyway, it's all over the map. I think it's a good book for anyone who enjoys speculative in their fiction, so anything fantastical, maybe kind of scientific. It's also kind of got a dark academia side to it as well. I would not classify it necessarily as a dark academia book, but there's an aspect of the plot that falls into that, so if that's something you're into, I think you would still enjoy this and enjoy the references to that. It's just really great. I don't know. It's amazing. It's not very long. I think it's worth everybody's time to give it a shot. Was the ending totally off the walls, bonkers crazy? It was in a way. I didn't know the ending until I was reading it, but I was able to read into some of the details of events that were happening and start to figure it out. But I don't think that ruined my experience at all. I think it was wonderful and magical, and like I said, it's going to be living rent-free in my head. And this is officially my first 5-star of the year. I will say also briefly while I'm thinking about it, I did change my rating on Storygraph of The Last Kingdom to 4 stars. I think I mentioned in my last clip that I rated it 4.5 on Storygraph, but I decided to go 4 stars because the further I get from it and the more I think about it, the more I'm like, you know what, I really enjoyed it, but I don't know if I would put it quite that high. That being said, I am still open to continuing that series at some point. Updates on Crime and Punishment. I am also really loving this, and I think this is probably going to be my second 5-star of the year, depending on how my next book goes that I'm starting after Piranesi, which I'll talk about in a moment. But yes, this is going great. I love Dunya still, the sister. I love Sonia, who has shown up a little bit more. I just read a very fascinating scene between Sonia and Raskolnikov. Is that his name? Raskolnikov, I'm pretty sure. Anyway, the main character. It's a very tense book. Like the whole time is just, they're so tense because it's very psychological. You already know that the main character is a murderer. Like that right from the beginning, you know that. And he also is just not likable, I have found, but I also am getting hints that maybe at one point he was a lot more likable as a person. And that's why there's these people who are very nice people, his family, his friend, who are very good people and you like them, but for some reason they all care about this main character and you were like, what? He's just not great of a person, even just regardless of the murder part. But because they are so fond of him, you get the feeling that he hasn't always been this way and that there was something that kind of plunged him into this mindset that he's in now. And so that is really interesting to read, and it's just, yeah, it's really great. Definitely going to be a 5-star, I would guess at this point. I mean, we'll see how the rest of the book goes, but I am pretty sure I'm going to end up rating it 5 stars. It's great, which gets me very excited because this is my first Russian classic that I've been like really enjoying. I liked Anna Karenina pretty well. I think maybe in the future I need to physically read it all the way through and maybe I'll like it better. I listened to the audiobook mostly for that one and I think it might have hindered my enjoyment potentially. The narrator wasn't awful. I just feel like the process of listening to it while driving and stuff and being slightly distracted didn't help my experience. I also read and listened to War and Peace, and that one was one that I think similar. I think if I physically read it I might enjoy it a bit more, but audiobooking, I would listen to that one a lot while working, and yeah, it was one of my first giant classics that I ever read, so I think that also impacted my experience. But anyway, this is my first Russian classic that I've been reading and really loving, and I'm excited every day to get back into it. So, like I said, we'll see how the rest of this goes. I'm very curious to see where the plot goes in this. It's only been 4 days since the big event in part 1, and within the story, and it's crazy to me. It feels like it's been so much longer, and I think that's what you're supposed to feel like. It's so much has happened, and yet not very much has happened because a lot of it is inside of his head. Anyway, it's a great book, loving it. So like I said, I do have another book that I am starting. It's the last of my tournament results, and that is Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb. I will be starting this potentially tonight, although it might be I read the first page or 2 tonight just to get started. I like doing that. I don't know about other people, but when I finish a book, I really like at least reading the first page or 2 of the next one, just so I can, like, in Goodreads and Storygraph put in that I'm reading that now. Plus it just helps me like feel solidly like, okay, I'm reading this, like I'm officially in it. So anyway, I'll probably do something like that today, but other than that, I'll probably end up watching something and potentially starting a cross-stitching project. I've had this cross-stitching set for a while that's really cute, and I just haven't done it yet, so I figured I may as well start. I also have really been dying to rewatch Far From the Madding Crowd. I usually watch it every Victober, and I didn't this year, and I still haven't rewatched it, so I just feel like I need to do that. So we'll see what happens with that. I don't work tomorrow either, so I'll be able to sleep in, which means I can stay up a bit later. I do have a work meeting tomorrow just on Microsoft Teams that I'll need to do in the afternoon, and then I have an appointment to go to the temple, which has to do with my religious beliefs. We are able to go there and do some various things. It's all sacred, so I don't want to discuss it on here, but it is a nice thing to do. And I'm very excited because it's been a couple weeks since I've been able to go, and it will just be a nice way to get myself back in a good state of mind. And it's just a very peaceful place to be. So I'm excited to be able to do that. But I probably will also read more of this tomorrow. I also need to do some writing. I'm kind of hitting a point in my book where I don't 100% know what's coming next. I know what I'm working towards as far as the series as a whole, but also this first book. I know what I'm working towards, but I need to fill in the middle part a little bit more, flesh it out. I have enough that I could probably take a few hours to write up to where I really don't know where to take it next, but I have basic ideas of what I want to happen. I just need to connect them a little bit more. So anyway, I might need to start doing more brainstorming sessions for a little bit before I write more, but we'll see what happens. Anyway, just wanted to update you with Piranesi. Like I said, loved it. Crime and Punishment going well. I'm very excited to start Assassin's Apprentice. I think it's going to be great. I have high expectations for this. Maybe I should lower them a bit, but yeah, I've just heard great things about Robin Hobb, so I'm kind of excited to just enter into her world. Also, this cover is gorgeous. I purposely got the UK cover because I love it, and all of the American covers I've seen are just not great. They're just the classic, like, fantasy covers, where adult fantasy covers where it's just like figures fighting on the cover with swords, or like even like drawings of just people fighting and stuff, and I'm like, I prefer fantasy covers that are more like this, where they kind of have that theme going, but maybe I don't love covers with people on them. Some of them work, it just depends on the situation, but most of the time I prefer it when there's not people, or at least not like a picture of a person. I prefer it when it's a little more artistic. But anyway, yes, I got this for that purpose, and if I like it, I'll probably get the rest of the series, and really the rest of the whole Elderling. Is that what her like grand series world is called? I'm pretty sure the Elderling series, I want to get the whole of it probably in this edition, but we will see how this one goes before I jump into that. So anyway, yes, that is all I have to say. I will update you at least once or twice more depending on what's going on. I guess I should mention I have started a new audiobook, sort of. I've listened to like 15 minutes minutes of it, but it is The Mysteries of Udolpho by Radcliffe, which I have started early for Feb Regency, but I will discuss that more in my February TBR, which probably is already up by the time you're seeing this, if my plans go according to plan. Anyway, I need to end this clip because it's gone long enough, and I will talk to you once I have something to say, or maybe if I finish Assassin's Apprentice and or Crime and Punishment, and I'll just wrap it up there. Although maybe I'll do one clip for each. I don't know. We'll see what happens. Hey guys, so I just got finished filming a video and I thought I would come on here because I realized there's a few book acquisitions that I had not mentioned in this vlog, and this is where I'm going to throughout the year mention what books I do bring in. I do still intend to limit how many books I'm purchasing because I want to decrease the amount of pages and books on my physical TBR, so that is my job. But I know myself, I know I can't go without buying books at all, so I just have kind of planned out a way to keep myself from buying quite as many, and a lot of that has to do with pre-orders, so that I know books are going to come in the next couple of weeks, so I'm less inclined to go look for other ones. And because they're pre-orders, I'm paying full price for them, or like a higher price for them, and so I'm less tempted to buy, for example, 4 books because it will only cost $20. I only buy one book that costs about $20, and that just keeps me from buying too many because the money I have as far as like spending $20 here and there, but the space and the desire to add to my TBR is not there. So anyway, I wanted to mention a few books, 2 that I've pre-ordered, one that I did purchase with a gift card that I got for Christmas. So starting with that one, I did get The Children of Jocasta by Natalie Haynes. I have not read anything by Natalie Haynes. I do have 1,000 Ships on my physical TBR already, so I'll probably read that first, but I just really wanted this because I thought the idea of a book about the children of Jocasta sounded fascinating. I don't think I've ever seen a book about these particular mythical figures, and I was just very excited about it. So even if I don't like 1,000 Ships, I did fully intend to read this all along. And if I don't like both of them, then I'll probably stop reading Natalie Haynes, but I knew I at least wanted to give those 2 a try for sure. So anyway, I did get this with a gift card that I got from Christmas, and I'm very excited to get to it whenever I do. Then in the month of January, I've had 2 pre-orders come in that I'm excited about. The first being Phaedra by Laura Shepherdson. This is actually on Heather from Fresh Parchment's favorite books of 2022. She got an ARC for it and really enjoyed it. It follows the mythical figure of Phaedra, who marries Theseus, and I believe she is assaulted by her father-in-law, potentially, maybe? No, actually it's her stepson, but either way she's assaulted, and there's a lot of discussion about different women in the mythology who kind of are taking a stand against what happened to them, I guess. I don't know details beyond that, but like I said, Heather really enjoyed it, which piqued my interest even more. I had already pre-ordered and received this by the time I saw her video, but it did give me hope, and I'm really excited to read this. I have several pre-orders of Greek myth retellings coming in because I'm just a sucker for them. I can't help it. The other book I ended up pre-ordering was The Mitford Affair by Marie Benedict, excuse me. This follows the 6 Mitford sisters between the world wars, who I don't actually know a ton about them beyond that they were very famous women in the literary and social world. Oh, and it looks like politically also they were well known. And I believe 2 of them ended up kind of in the arms of some famous Nazis in Germany. And I believe we follow a sister who did not fall into that and is suspicious of her sisters. That's all I really know about it, but it sounded very intriguing. These are a set of women that I have very much been intrigued by for a while, and I just haven't jumped into getting to know very much about them yet, so I'm hoping this will kind of spark a little more for me. And I know this author, I have not read anything by her, but I know she's written a few things that have kind of sounded interesting to me, but not interesting enough to go out of my way to get. So this is the first that has really piqued my interest enough for me to indulge in, and we'll see how it goes. I also love the pink spine, like having this on my shelves amongst all of the black and more muted colors. It will just be really exciting to have just this bright pink spine. Some people might find it jarring, but I kind of find it exciting. So anyway, I just wanted to bring that up. Some updates on reading. I have been working a little bit on Assassin's Apprentice. It is the 28th of January, so I have about 4 days left, and I'm only about 40 to 50 pages into Assassin's Apprentice. I'm really enjoying it. I've just been in a bit of a life/reading slump the past week. I've still been reading, but I just have been in a little bit of a depression funk, so it's made it a lot harder for me to have the energy to do much. It's definitely been a stage where it's less like feeling sad. I mean, that's still part of it, but it's more feeling just too tired to do really anything. So I've been dealing with that, but there is 4 days left in the month. It's enough time to potentially get, if not all the way through Assassin's Apprentice, at least most of the way through, as long as I give it the time it needs to be able to do that. So hopefully I'll be successful in doing that. Crime and Punishment I have been keeping up on. I have not fallen behind. Like I said, I've been reading, and most of my reading that I have done has been my reading for Crime and Punishment, and I've still really enjoyed it. Like, even though I've been in a funk, I've still enjoyed what I've read and enjoyed coming back to it each day. I just haven't been able to read quite as much as usual. So anyway, that's still going well. The next clip, unless I for some reason am inspired to do some B-roll, which I highly doubt, but potentially I could be, but if not, the next clip will be me wrapping this up, probably finishing Assassin's Apprentice, and hopefully really liking it. I have really enjoyed it so far. It's definitely a slower burn, but I actually really have found as I've gotten older, I really prefer slower burn stories, as long as there's something that's keeping me engaged, as long as there's some sort of relationship or character that I'm just really loving, or even just the world or the writing that's keeping me engaged and intrigued. I'm okay with taking a bit of a slower time with the plot, as long as, yeah, it has something to pull me through. If it's slow and I don't care about any of the characters, we probably have a problem. But I do tend to prefer a lot more slower burn stories, because it feels like I get pulled more into the world and into the characters' lives, and I just really enjoy that feeling. So anyway, I will turn this off and hopefully read. I need to get to my Crime and Punishment pages for the day, and then obviously Assassin's Apprentice, but also I've been very motivated the past day or two to write. So we'll see what today brings. It's like just after 10 in the morning, so I've got the whole rest of the day to do all sorts of things, so we'll see. Anyway, that is all for now. Surprisingly, I actually put forth the extra effort to get my good lighting in the library in here, rather than relying on my super yellow lighting, so you're welcome. Also, another side tangent, I just set up an appointment with my eye doctor. I should have set one up 3 years ago when my prescription expired, but I didn't, because I'm just myself, which means I'm going to be able to get contacts again, which I'm very excited about for purposes of filming. I mean, vlogs, don't worry, you'll still probably see my glasses quite a bit, but for other videos I won't have to wear my glasses, which means hopefully glare won't be as much of a problem anymore, which will be wonderful, because I always hate having to figure out where to put my lighting to avoid having too much glare on my glasses to the point where it's like completely distracting. So look forward to that. I know I am. You probably don't even care, but I will feel much more comfortable once that is figured out. Anyway, I have come on here to say I have finished Crime and Punishment by Fyodor Dostoevsky. It is February 1st today. I finished this yesterday, and I ended up giving it 5 stars like I expected. It had a much happier ending than I was expecting it to have, honestly. So if you're worried about this having a really sad ending, it's not like everything ends up a-okay in the end, because obviously the main character in this murdered someone. That's the whole premise of the book. But there is surprisingly a little more hope in the end than what I was expecting, so that was really nice. So specific thoughts on this, obviously I did really enjoy it. I found the characters very interesting. A lot of the discussions were interesting. I felt like it was a very pacey novel, especially for a 19th century Russian classic. Not that I've read that many, but those that I have read have been a little slow, and this definitely had moments where it felt very slow. There was a lot of philosophy in this. I just feel like in the 19th century, the Russians were the angsty ones. They were like the tortured artists of the literary world. Like, they were so... Every time I read a Russian classic from that era, it's so angsty, and so like people just giving monologues about all these philosophies and ideas and all their existential crises. And honestly, that's not really what I'm into. So there were a couple points in this where it was like, okay, this is, yeah, let's move on. I mentioned before I really like Dunya. I will will say Sophia, I really liked her in a lot of ways, but I don't know, her outcome was a little bit strange to me. I feel like I would have liked better for her. But I feel like I understand the point that Dostoevsky, or potentially what point Dostoevsky would have been going for with that ending and her being paired up with a certain character that personally I think was in a very different situation from her, and that her situation was not really related to his because of the nature of things. I'm trying not to spoil anything in how I say this. Basically, the idea of sin is very prevalent in this book, and so how her story ended up is connected to her sins, which, like I said, I feel like it's more complicated than that, but I see that direction that Dostoevsky was going in. However, I do wish she had had a little more development and gone a little bit of a different direction. I also will say I wish Dunya had had a little bit more character development, but I still did really like her in the end. I like how she's very like her brother, and yet she's much more rational than he is. I will also say I really liked the epilogue and the last chapter just before the epilogue. I felt like both were really, it was just a really good way to wrap it up. I really liked the ending, which I'm so happy about because I was a little worried. Things were starting to get a little drawn out and I felt like it might be underwhelming, but it was done in a way that was very satisfying to me. Who would I recommend this to? I would say if you're interested, definitely give it a try. It's very interesting and engaging. I think it is a really good place to start with Russian classic literature. Again, I have read very, very little, so take that with a grain of salt, but I do feel like it's short enough. It's still long, it's still pretty chunky. Like, this copy is like 465 pages and the writing is pretty small, as you can see, but it's not terribly big like Anna Karenina or War and Peace, so it's a little more doable that way. It's also a little bit more pacey and dramatic. I don't know if dramatic's the right word. It has much more intense things going on, as you could tell by the premise, so it is very engaging in that way. If you are a little more into classics and you read a lot more, I would say if you really like Victorian literature or just 19th century literature in general, I feel like there's kind of different, I mean, obviously there's different subgroups within that era, and there's some books from this era that are more philosophical leaning and have long drawn out soliloquies and existential crises and philosophical debates between characters that I don't think are for everybody. In fact, they're really not much for me. This does have moments of that, but I feel like it's a lot more bearable than in some other books. So if you feel like you can handle that, I would say give it a try. It's really enjoyable. I mentioned this in my ranking for my January reads / my February TBR video, so I'll link that down below if I remember. But I feel like this is probably going to be on my favorites of the year unless I read another book by Fyodor Dostoevsky before the end of the year. And the reason is because I feel like I enjoy his storytelling style and his approach to characterization. However, I feel like this story didn't connect with me as well as a different type of story would. I do really like true crime and stuff like that, but especially when it's fictional, I'm a lot less likely to have it be a favorite of all time. It's just something I would enjoy, if that makes sense. Fictional mystery type stories like that or thrillers are things that I'll enjoy, I'll have a good time with, but they're very, very rarely going to be a favorite. So I feel like because of that, this is a favorite for now because I did really like Dostoevsky's approach and I did like the characters a lot. However, I feel like another story by him would probably grip me more than this one did. So yes, I have finished that. I finished 3 of my 4 first reads of the year that I had in the tournament. And now I just have Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb. I am only 92 pages into this, which I guess is like just under a third of the way through. So I'm into it, but I still have a lot to go. That being said, I think I'm going to fly through the rest of this pretty quickly if I give myself the time. I'm really attached to Fitz already. I know a lot of people talk about him like they just love him, but I have heard a lot of people say that this first book was just kind of mediocre for them and that they got a little more into his character later on, but I already have cried over this boy. I just read a chapter where he's just really struggling because basically he received love that he's been missing for a long time, and then he seemingly had that love taken away. It was more complicated than that, but to him, he felt like that love was being taken away, and so it just destroyed him. And then he realized the truth behind what happened, that he wasn't losing that love, and it just broke him. And I just, oh my gosh. It was so, oh my gosh, Fitz. He's just such a sweet boy. I'm interested to see how I feel about him as he grows older. But yes, I'm really enjoying this, and I'm hoping to finish it by the end of this week at the latest so that I can move into my February TBR a little bit more. Oh, perfect. Apparently this book is 392 pages, and like I said, I just finished page 92, so I have 300 pages left exactly. I think I could easily get it done in the next few days. I just have to dedicate the time to it, which I think I'm motivated to do now. I was on a little bit of a reading / life slump the past couple of weeks, just a lot of stress at work and frustration, and I've just been trying to get myself under control. So I feel like I'm feeling better now, and I'm excited to read this and motivated to read it. I'm into it far enough that I am emotionally connected enough that I can fly through it. I don't know about other people, but usually the first like 100 pages of a book, because it's all new to me, I tend to read it slower because I'm not as motivated to pick it up because I'm not as connected with it yet. But once I hit about 100 pages or so, depending on the book, I really just fall in love and dive in. So now I've hit that point, I feel like, and I'm excited to see what ends up happening. I already on Book Depository put the second and third on my wish list, so in the next little bit I can for sure get the second one, at least in this edition specifically, because this is the pretty one. That's why I got it. But yes, I'm really liking it already. I think this potentially could be a favorite of the year as well. So that's 3 out of these 4 that are going to be in the favorites of the year, and even the 4th one was like a 4 stars. So like, great. You guys did great, basically, voting on my first reads of the year. I'm really happy that I've liked all of these. I mean, who knows? Maybe this will take a huge downturn. I really doubt it, though. I really doubt that it will take a huge downturn. I don't know if this will be a favorite of the year, I guess, because if I read the rest of the series, I'll probably like the other ones more. At least that's what I hear how other people feel. But suffice it to say, I'm really emotionally engaged in this already, and it's just so, I really like slow burn fantasy. I'm not going to lie. I mean, it depends on how it's done. The writing has to be just so, but I love fantasy where I can emotionally connect with the characters, and I feel like that happens best when it's a slow burn and I'm able to build up that attachment in a more natural way. So anyway, I'm going to end this clip because it's way too long. My next clip will be me having finished Assassin's Apprentice and wrapping this thing up finally, unless there's a reason why I need to come on here before that, which it's possible. I finished, and oh my lord, I love this book so much. I love Fitz so much. I just need the second one, but I don't have time to read the second one. I need to continue with my reading of the Cosmere as well, and now I'm jumping into the realm of the Elderlings. I don't know what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna do both, but it's gonna be interesting on top of all the other reading I want to do. Originally, I was going to give this 4 stars because I expect the rest of the series to get even better, and I just wanted to leave wiggle room. But when it came down to it and I was going into Goodreads, I had to give it 5 stars. Like, I couldn't not, because I needed to convey that I love this book so much. So Storygraph is where I hedged my bets a little bit and gave it 4.5 stars so that I have my wiggle room for the rest of the trilogy. But oh my gosh, I just can't. Like, I'm gonna have major book hangover. I've been doing reading sprints for Feb Regency with the hosts, and they're currently muted right now because I had to tell you my thoughts on this book. Did I continue to read while they were talking? Yes, I did, because I had like 6 pages left and I just needed to do it. And I was getting really stressed towards the end because it was one of those where there was only like a few, like 10, 15 pages left and things weren't resolved. And I was like, I can't handle this. This book better not end this way. It didn't, relief, but I don't even know what to say because it's so fresh still. So I'm probably gonna just have to share my thoughts more formally and effectively and concisely in my February wrap-up / my March TBR, because I need time and I need this vlog to be over, because I need to put it up on Monday or Tuesday and it's currently Saturday, so it needs to be over. But let me do a quick ranking of all of the books I read in this video. So my lowest rated is The Last Kingdom by Bernard Cornwell. Did really enjoy this, but there were just some things that maybe just to my specific taste didn't quite work. I will say the other thing with Assassin's Apprentice is that it kind of was the story I wanted this to be. Like, Fitz and Uhtred are in kind of similar situations in a lot of ways, as far as being orphaned and raised by people who aren't necessarily your parents, and them feeling very lonely in a lot of ways. But I feel like Assassin's Apprentice did it in a way that personally to my tastes was more effective than The Last Kingdom. I do still want to continue with the series, but I think it's gonna be a while before I focus too much on it, especially because now, like I said, I'm now going on a Cosmere and a Realm of the Elderling's journey, so this one may have to wait, but I did still enjoy it. Next, I have Crime and Punishment, which I originally gave 5 stars on Storygraph, but I decided to lower it to 4.5 because there were some things that lost me a little bit. I wasn't overly attached to the main character in this, but pretty much everything else about it I loved. Like, I loved the storyline. I was very intrigued by a lot of what was going on. A lot of the discussions were really interesting to me and engaging. I enjoyed coming back to this every day. It was great. But like I said, there were a few things that held back my enjoyment of this a little bit. And also, similar to Assassin's Apprentice, I expect other books by Dostoevsky to win my heart more than this one did, even though I did really enjoy it. So I felt like I needed the wiggle room for it, but I did leave it as 5 stars on Goodreads because it is incredible, one that I will remember for sure and that I'm so glad I read. So basically all these last 3 are pretty much 5-star reads, which is incredible. Like, I'm so glad my first few reads of the year were such successes. So thank you guys so much for picking these. I'm having a bit of a difficult time with these two because I love them both. And I feel like this one, Fitz as a main character, grabbed my heart more than Piranesi did. However, I feel like Piranesi is a perfectly self-contained story. The writing in both are just as beautiful. They're different, but they're just as beautiful as each other. And I feel like Assassin's Apprentice is the first of a series. So there's a lot of loose ends still. There's a lot of development that can still happen. So I feel like I have to put Assassin's Apprentice in second place, because I feel like there's still more to the story, which there is obviously, whereas Piranesi is just all on its own incredible. But both of these, major favorites now. Like, I love these. They're both going to be heavy in my head. I mean, I'm going to continue with the series. I already have ordered the second one, but just today from Book Depository, so it's gonna be a while before it comes, which is a little frustrating, but it's probably for the best because I do have other things I need to read. But yes, these both were incredible. I think I'm going to put Piranesi first and then Assassin's Apprentice, but they are very, very close. They just are doing different enough things that I feel like Piranesi, because it is a full story in and of itself, I have to put above because there's the completion there. But this still incredible, and the tears that came to me while reading it, oh my gosh. Anyway, before I keep just being so distressed over my love of that book, I'm going to go. I think I'm going to pause and like finish watching an old reading vlog from Sarah's Perusals. I love her vlogs. I think I'm actually going to make a video talking about some channels whose vlogs I really, really love, because I just find vlogs so comforting to watch. Anyway, but Sarah's Perusals is one of my very favorites as far as vlogs go. And I am in the middle of watching one of her reading vlogs for Song of Achilles when she finished that last year, because I've watched all of her recent ones, so I go backwards in time when I just need the comfort of a Sarah Perusals vlog. So I think I'm gonna finish that and then I'll probably start the next one. But this is the end of this vlog. Let me know down below if you've read any of these, your thoughts on them. Thank you again so much to all who have participated in my tournament reads. I hope this vlog was a nice conclusion for you as it was for me. Oh, what a delightful reading month it gave me for January. So anyway, that is all I have to say. Again, thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!